Good day, everyone. Welcome to Azure Back to School 2022, and this session, a day in the life of Microsoft's Sentinel Analyst. I'm Trent. I'm a cloud security advocate for Microsoft. I'm also a global subject matter expert for Microsoft Sentinel. I've worked with this product every day for, as of September, 3 years, helped lots of customers deploy and manage this tool, right? So I'm so happy for the opportunity to talk today about my favorite topic. I hope you get all from this, right? The interest you have for all that you were hoping to get. I want to ensure that you still get the value of your questions, so you can absolutely please reach out to me over Twitter. It's really easy, at Rod Trent on Twitter, with any questions you might have, okay? So let's go ahead and get started. Every presenter or lecturer or teacher or trainer will generally have their own goals for a session. The things that we talk about today absolutely are important, and you're here because you're interested in those, but I also have a little bit of interest in the things that I want to make sure that I get across today. Here's those goals, right? So think about these. As we go through today, if I don't capture each and every one of these, then yeah, absolutely hit me up again and say, Rod, you didn't cover that thing, right? So as we go through today, I want you to picture yourself in this role. We're going to talk through very specific use cases today, security use cases that we'll use Microsoft Sentinel to look at. Picture yourself in this role. Microsoft Sentinel is a SIEM, Security Information Event Management tool. For those that are aware and have experience with these types of tools, they're generally considered for very large security teams in very large environments. But the way Microsoft Sentinel has been engineered and architected, you don't need these large. They absolutely work. It absolutely works with these large teams. And many of our customers do have those large environments, but it is engineered from an efficiency standpoint through automation and some other things that we'll talk about that even small teams can take advantage of. I delivered a workshop, interestingly, to a IT pro team of one. So everything else, and they were an IT pro team of one to a very large environment. They were able to utilize and integrate Microsoft Sentinel into their current daily tasks and still be able to do everything else, right? So this product can also be utilized by any organization, all right? So as you go through this, picture yourself in this role, figure out how much time it might actually take. It takes me a lot longer to talk through our discussion today than it does to actually perform these actions. It's a lot of clicks. So just put yourself in this role and count the clicks instead of the amount of time it takes me to describe how to work with these tools. Okay, so our discussion today is an example and an overview of the workflow as Microsoft Sentinel defines it, okay, by the way of the technologies, features, options that are built into the product. So the product itself is the template, or will be the template, for our discussion today, okay? We're putting Microsoft Sentinel features through their paces. But understand that the features the product provides can be utilized to follow a very standard workflow for any security operations center or security team. In our case, with Microsoft Sentinel, we also have the automation and remediation component built into the product. It's not extra, okay? It's not an add-on, but it's part of the product. Your workflow may look slightly different, right? Depending on your team size, the skill sets of your team members, politics of all things, regulatory requirements, what have you, all sorts of things that go into the makeup of your organization's personality and workflow. But consider this a good base workflow to either start from or to implement. This is a good recommendation, particularly if you don't have a workflow designed and implemented already. You can take this as your template. And for those that have a daily task list or workflow already, understand that Microsoft Sentinel can accommodate your existing processes, all right? So we make it extremely easy to stand up and configure Microsoft Sentinel. Most customers can get that done in 30 minutes or less. Most of them a lot less without distractions, right? But it's the next steps that are important to capture. How does this fit into my daily workload, my daily task list? This session today, hopefully, will help you figure that out. And if not, again, reach out to me anytime we can discuss. Here we'll talk about how an analyst might use Microsoft Sentinel coming into work every single morning. What steps to take for the perceived operation. All right. Our first step is triage. This is the place, this is the step where we make a choice or decision about if it's needed to react to an incident. Next is the investigation phase. Okay, this phase is used to get to the root cause, determine how you might remediate, and possibly how to handle subsequent occurrences. The response phase is where we take our decision based on an investigation and actually respond to the incident. And then ultimately, after completing the process, okay, we need to evolve the intelligence of our operations by considering how to handle false positives. How do we react to those items that we may not need to review in the future, right? We first need to identify what those are and then determine what we're going to do with them, all in an effort to eliminate noise from the system so we are always able to focus on those pieces that are critical to securing the environment without capturing trusted sources or whitelisted accounts or admin accounts or what have you in our future, let's call it a crime net. So let's start to settle in a bit before we get too deep into our discussion. If you go back and think again about my goals, okay? So I have this favor to ask, and this is the approach we're going to take. I very much intend to give you a tour of Microsoft Sentinel today by highlighting the various areas in relation to how they would be used every single day. But to get to the perfect effect here, do something for me. Again, imagine yourself in this role of the Microsoft Sentinel analyst. Let's pretend for our time together today that I am the script writer, I'm the director, but you know what? You're the star of this show. Even if this is the first time you've ever seen the Microsoft Sentinel console, an experienced security person will absolutely understand the topics and concepts that I'm going to discuss. Okay? You've likely played this role already many times, whether it's investigative analyst, if you call it that, or a hunting analyst. I promise you will grasp every single nuance of our discussion today. You have the experience, you have the chops. Now put yourself again in this role. You are the Microsoft Sentinel analyst. Picture yourself doing the things I talk about. Doing this, I promise, is going to help you understand exactly how Microsoft Sentinel provides a better, more modern way of doing things, because Microsoft Sentinel has a way of helping identify gaps in your current methods and security tools. Okay. The other thing that this does for us is that it helps you understand that true time commitment that I was talking about. Okay. I can talk forever about Microsoft Sentinel, right? But for you to get a good comprehension of how this might fit into your workflow, put yourself in this role, make this real time, right? It's like the Einstein theory of special relativity, right? The closer you are to an object, the more real it seems, the more real it becomes to you, okay? So let's kind of do this all together. Just throw reality out the door for a second and put yourself in this role with me. All right, so triage is the first step in our SOC or Security Operations Center workflow. All right, so let's apply Microsoft Sentinel features and techniques to this step. See what this looks like. So here are our tasks that we want to talk through in our first scene, or better said in acting terms, what's my motivation? All right, first we want to dig into and understand whatever this situation or event is by using the power and value of the incident overview pane within Microsoft Sentinel. Secondly, I want to provide additional context for the investigation we're going to use today using some simple and powerful automation, again, built into Microsoft Sentinel. Then let's determine if the user has a habit of performing the same or similar function to help serve up a level of comfort, right, through the additional context. Have we seen this before? We're going to determine that and figure that out. Then we're going to use a graphical component that's a piece of Microsoft Sentinel to expose some of the additional details of the occurrence we didn't see in that initial data. All right, so let's get a storyline view of what this activity is. We'll then manage our piece of the life cycle incident, and then finally wrap up our triage by providing some necessary context. Okay, here we go. Just jumping directly into the Microsoft Sentinel console, we can see that we definitely have activity that needs to be reviewed and addressed. All right, we see alerts and events that have been wrapped into official incidents that absolutely need our attention. See that there at the top right. Once we review our most recent cases, okay, we can jump directly into the incidents blade. See that on the left, to get a sense of what else is waiting, right, and determine how critical each open incident is by the clearly defined level of severity that we can see that's immediate focus. All right. Here's where the incident blade is, located in Microsoft Sentinel. All right, see that on the far left. For our example here, or what we'll be using as our example throughout some of this discussion today, is an incident generated that tracks when there is the potential of a brute force attack against the Azure portal. Okay, so now that we have found something of interest, let's go into the full details of the incident to learn more about the actual event. All right, let's try to get a good understanding of exactly what happened and who did it. Notice over here on the right-hand side of the console, we have another overview pane. All right. So let's dig into the full details for this incident for a minute. Okay. With our analyst eyes, remember, you are the star here. Okay. You're in this role. Let's dig in and discover what you might think would be important to capture as we build evidence around whatever this activity is. Okay. So I'm going to direct you here and walk through some of the things I see as the director or this person writing this script, but feel free to scan the page, see if you can find something that I might potentially have missed that you think is also important to your environment. Okay, so we see in this overview pane the incident description. The overview pane carries on over with us into the full incident details. Now we can see a little bit more about what absolutely has transpired here. If you read that description, you see that a person unsuccessfully trying to log into the Azure portal more than 5 times, an alert is going to get generated and that information is going to have been captured. Okay, so let's take a look at our preliminary evidence. We can see the artifacts that are associated with this incident. That was gathered. We have an alert that was generated, just one. Okay, so it doesn't seem like we're overcome by a critical situation here yet. Okay. We have one event. Again, if there were more events and more alerts associated here, that would be a slight indication that we have an ongoing problem and that we may need to give this incident a more critical approach. We don't, so let's move on. All right. Look at this. This is excellent. We have entities associated with this incident. Okay. Entities are so important for our investigations. Without knowing who did it or where they connected from or to, we would absolutely have nothing to go on. We'd have to close this out without any investigation, right? So imagine, if you will, since we're talking about a movie or a TV show here, right? Putting yourself in this role. Imagine a police chief slapping an investigation folder on the TV detective's desk, all right? No suspect to antagonize, no phone number or location to begin investigating. Start filtering through that folder. Literally no evidence. You can just imagine how quickly that investigation would turn into an absolute cold case and get filed away somewhere. Can't do anything with it, right? In our security world, zero evidence is absolutely unacceptable. Okay, so let's look here. What has been associated with this incident? What do we see here? We have one account, right? Whoever this is, and we have one IP address. So we have a suspect and a phone number, if you will, right? A person of interest and a way to contact them. As the actor in our story, this here, we talked about our motivation, this is your motivation, all right? We see a clear picture of this activity, the crime scene, if you will, right? Brute force attack on the Azure portal. And now we also have someone to interview and a way to contact them. Okay, so that's good evidence, but we actually need a little more. So let's begin. We have the suspect and the phone number, but more context about this occurrence would absolutely be helpful. Okay, the more context we have, the evidence we can gather, the more understanding of the entities involved, the quicker we can understand what happened and hopefully close out this case efficiently and in good order. Okay, so let's delve into this IP address first. Is this a good IP address or a bad one? Just by looking at it, I have no clue. Okay, has it been reported through a third-party security service? Could it be that we've identified a new culprit potentially? Something needs to be reported to the authorities. Here's a great way to use Microsoft Sentinel playbooks to accomplish this. Over on the right-hand side of the screen, click the playbooks link. In my list of playbooks, you can see that I have one that takes the IP address associated with this incident and resubmits it to a third-party API to return the geolocation of the IP address. Okay. Again, we're trying to determine if this is a trustworthy IP address or not. Okay. Even though we can do this manually, copy the IP address, paste it into a third-party website, get the results, and then manually copy it out and paste it somewhere, right? Why not use the power of Microsoft Sentinel to do that for us? All without ever leaving the comfort of this console, I might add. Again, integrated, built in. Understand that this list of playbooks are from my list in my console. Okay? Your list in your console will vary based on the actions you feel you need to take. Your list will contain the automation that you create. Very easy to create. I'm going to show you an example here shortly. Here in my example, these are things that I've determined based on my environment and the things and the habits that my end users have are valuable for my operations and investigations. All right. If you want new playbooks and don't want to start from scratch, you can find a huge number of ready-made playbooks on our GitHub repository. There's also a playbook template repository within Microsoft Sentinel itself. You just literally need to enable them. Okay. Okay, additionally, remember we have another entity to work with, right? Had the IP address, but we absolutely have the gold standard of all entities, the user account, or in relation to how we're approaching this, the user account or our suspect, okay? And truly, doesn't security really just kind of boil down to tracking end user habits or the bad things that our end users do, right? This playbook takes the user account, in our case for this instance, the full email address, and submits it to the Have I Been Pwned service. If you're not familiar, Troy Hunt, good friend of mine, invented and now operates and maintains the Have I Been Pwned service. Service tracks user accounts that have been compromised through theft from online services. All right. Of course, based on policy and other things, none of our users would ever use their work account for an online service for things like dating or online gambling or stock pricing or whatever it happens to be. Of course not, but we still have to do the due diligence just in case. Somebody may ask, hey, has that been compromised online? We can do that utilizing Microsoft Sentinel. Have I Been Pwned has an API that we can submit this user that's been captured. We can submit it to the service and have it report back to us if the user account has been compromised online or not. And we can do all this, again, through the Microsoft Sentinel console because it's integrated. If you're interested in this one, this particular playbook is also available from that GitHub repository I talked about earlier. So let's take a quick look under the covers for one of the playbooks, this piece of automation. This one is for submitting the IP address to ip-api.com, third-party API service for collecting geolocation for IP addresses, okay? Playbooks are based on Azure Logic Apps. If you're not familiar, the Logic Apps service provides a graphical interface for developing logical steps for automation. Okay, the amount and types of automation you can create is absolutely endless and literally up to your own creativity. If you can think about it, if you can think it up, right? If it's something you want to invent, Logic Apps can probably do it for you and do it very, very quickly in this visual manner. So for our purposes here, we're getting the incident information from Microsoft Sentinel. We're submitting the IP address to ip-api.com, okay? Parsing the return value from the API, and then writing the contents to the incident's comment section. All right. So let's take a look at what just transpired using our playbooks and move on in our triage process. Okay. So both playbooks ran and found that neither the email address or the IP address are suspicious. Right? You can see that. You can see the comments were added to the investigation for additional context and additional enrichment for this event. All right. We can now also, as part of this triage process, change severity if we want to. Okay. Change the incident to active, assign it to another analyst who might have a different skill set. You know, maybe the extent of our job, right, on our team is triage, and we have others on our team with other skill sets to deliver the rest of the investigation. Or, depending on the size of our team, as I mentioned earlier, how our responsibilities are designated, we may be that individual carrying through to the next step. So we can either assign it to a colleague or assign it to ourselves, and then just absolutely right away begin the investigative process. We have some additional capabilities built into Microsoft Sentinel that allow for even more context building. One of those, called entity behavior, is easily accessible from the incident by clicking on the user account entity on either entity that we have there. Okay. Clicking on the user account entity takes us directly to the entity behavior feature in Microsoft Sentinel. This page allows us to dig a bit deeper into the history of this particular user. We know already, using our playbook, that the user account has not been compromised externally. Right? I'm going to shoot. But should this user be able to test brute force against the Azure console? Again, that's our primary function here. Should they have access to do so, and how can we tell? Entity behavior allows us to go back through the history of the user's actions. Okay, I'm selecting here the last 30 days of this user's activity, and I can see very clearly that this person, whoever this person is, has exhibited this behavior before. And not just once or twice, but it looks like this is kind of a common activity for this person. All right, so let's use another feature of Microsoft Sentinel, the investigation graph, to get a little bit deeper understanding of this user and the activity or activities they have performed. All right, see the investigation button or the investigate button on the bottom left of the screen. We'll click that to cause Microsoft Sentinel to create a graphical representation of the incident, or let's just call it kind of a storyline, since again, that's our approach. All right, here's our investigation graph. We can use this to identify a few additional items that will be useful for our investigation. All right, we see that this individual account has been part of more than a few investigations over recent memory or the data that is stored, right? She's also been part of a lot of incidents involving this same event that we're looking into. All right, see that? So before we close out our triage step, let's take time to document our findings. Okay, the findings that we supply here will be useful for the next analyst, whoever takes up this investigation next, or available for us should we need to come back to it later and we need to remember what has been done so far. Or even better, after we fully investigate and respond, this information will be available in the history of this investigation and types of investigations like it. So we can use our accumulated knowledge, this dictionary, this encyclopedia of knowledge, if you will, to help us work better and more efficiently in the future. All right? Everybody feel good about that scene? Okay, any retakes, of course, you'll have to come back and watch this a little bit later. But remember, our film schedule is absolutely tight today. All right, let's move on to phase 3 or scene 2 of our script. The next step, as you can see here in our SOC workflow, is the investigation phase. So let's use this step to look deeper into the exposed security of this event. Okay, let's look at how we'll do that. We'll first use a workbook and focus on some visualizations of the data. Look at the data a little bit differently. Okay. Next, we'll drill down to the raw events using search, using KQL or Kusto query language. This fantastic, don't get me on a soapbox, well-performing cloud design query language that we utilize across Microsoft Sentinel and almost everything in Azure. Okay. I could talk for days about KQL. A lot of people know that about me. All right. Once we find something, let's document it and set up our investigation task list using another feature called bookmarks. All right. Everybody ready? Okay, here we go. The next step in our SOC workflow is the investigation phase. Okay. This is a workbook that is included when you stand up Microsoft Sentinel. This one is for user and entity behavior analysis. Okay, this is going to allow us to dig a bit deeper into those areas from our incident that may need just a little bit more context. And specifically, what we're looking at, this allows us to view the information about our suspect, this individual, in a visual and more meaningful way. All right. I would rather read comic books than novels. I like pictures. So I like reporting. I like our workbooks. So let's dig into what's available here. Okay. By selecting our suspect in the workbook, the data is automatically adjusted down below to show what it is that we're looking to derive from that data. Okay. I can get a better understanding of exactly what our suspect, this individual that we've identified, has attempted in our environment within this time range that we've selected here. Okay, you see that? This one, we've changed workbooks, is another workbook that's available. This one, user map, can be deployed from our GitHub repository. Okay. Aptly, it's located in the workbooks folder if you go to our GitHub repository, which is aka.ms/as GitHub. All right, very easy short link to remember. Just like before, let's focus back in on our suspect. All right, let's select this individual and capture some additional information. All right, by adjusting to this person of interest, the dynamic capability of these workbooks help us hone directly in on this person, figure out where they're connecting from on this map based on the latitude and longitude of the IP address. This is actually captured based on that login information. So it would appear that this individual's connection is not out of the ordinary. Okay, they've logged in 45 times within the past 60 days, all from this specific same location. So sounds pretty good. Let's move on. Let's use the power of KQL. All right, that query language that I was talking about. Using the standard search command, you see that there. Let's see if we can figure out where this person exists in our tables. Understanding all of this individual's actions might lead to a different response or even an alternate theory about what exactly transpired here. Okay. Here, I'm searching for this person, but I'm also using the distinct command available to KQL to show me exactly the data sources in which this person exists. All the activity this person did, it's going to be in these tables. Knowing the data source or table that's attributed to this person allows me to quickly identify other things that this person may or may have not done in our environment. So this is awesome additional context, that enrichment I keep talking about, to include with our investigation. One thing that stands out to me here with these results you see down below is that this individual actually has one of our corporate devices. Okay, it's possible some of her actions, even this one, could be potentially contributed or attributed, to a specific device that is a corporate device. Is the device compliant? Is this person using a device that's secure and up to date? Fortunately, since we have this Intune environment log connected to Microsoft Sentinel, we can actually dig into this data. All right. Now that we know that this individual is connecting to our network from an Intune managed device, we can see that here. Let's tune our query just a little bit to get more specific information. All right. You can see in my second query, okay, I'm tuning, pun intended, into the Intune devices table, right? That's where we found that activity. And based on the results of this new query, we know a little bit more about the device that this individual is using, okay? Once we have those results, let's create a bookmark. This is a feature in Microsoft Sentinel to allow us to identify data and manually add it. We're going to create a bookmark in the system so we can either come back later to investigate deeper, Or in our case, what we're trying to accomplish, we're going to use it to add even more additional context to our open incident. Okay? Now that we have a bookmark created and knowing that there's an open incident against this individual's recent activity, let's use the results of our KQL query to add even more valuable context to our investigation. Okay? On the Bookmarks tab, locate the newly created book and choose to add it to an existing incident. All right, this bookmark. Locate our open incident in a list and just simply click and confirm your intention. All right, now that we have a bookmark created, okay, knowing that there's an open incident against this individual's recent activity, let's use the results. All right. All right, so almost full circle here. Here's the same screen we saw earlier. All right, but now you can see in the incident itself, a bookmark is now associated with the incident and attached as part of the investigation. We have more artifacts. More artifacts are always good. The bookmark is an awesome way to attach your findings, which leads to additional context and enrichment, which leads to ability to close out cases more quickly, right? And as you can see, in our efforts are rewarded, we now have information about the device that was being used, okay, in addition to everything else that we've already captured. So we have a suspect, we have a phone number, and now we also have a place of residence, if you want to put it that way. So summing up what we've done so far, we triaged an incident, determined that the user account seems innocuous, decided we still needed kind of longer term analysis, moved it to an investigation, investigated through workbooks, and decided it was logging from Microsoft sources on a compliant device and is still potentially a non-issue. Unfortunately, that's not the end of the game. All right, let's dig into it because we need to complete our timeline, need to complete our SOC workflow. All right, so almost full circle here. All right, here's the same screen. Now to the next phase. How will we respond to this based on what we know now? Before we dig too deep into the actual response, let's double check our work. Right? Let's confirm that our efforts are sound, theory is complete, and that this is not an ongoing active threat, and that this occurrence is truly a one-off. All right, so how are we going to do that? To accomplish this specific task, we take advantage of Microsoft Sentinel's live stream technology. All right, then after we check our work, let's see what one scenario might lead us to use using another playbook, potentially to block a user, quarantine a user or an account, just in case. Okay, let's make our operations smarter. We talked about this early on. Based on our investigation, let's see about adding this individual user potentially to our trusted list of individuals. Okay, and then finally, let's close out this incident so we can move on to other incidents or other security operations that are part of our daily workflow, or move on to our other task list if we're a small team and have other things that we need to accomplish. All right, so let's do this. All right, let's use Microsoft Sentinel's live stream capability to determine whether or not that this thing that we're investigating is still active or potentially a continuing and ongoing situation. All right, pretend for a minute, we've been pretending throughout, that this situation where we've identified a compromised account, okay, we've identified it because there has been a significant number of unsuccessful logins made within a very short time frame. Okay, by taking a hunting query, we've designed to expose this and send it to the live stream facility. This forces this hunting query to run every single minute until we either pause it, stop it, or delete it. Okay, if there are increments in results for that query when it runs, we're going to be notified. In fact, live stream alerting is built into the general alert system for the Azure portal. So as long as you have the portal open somewhere, you could be somewhere else working in some other Azure service, the alerting system will notify you that there are new results, telling you that this is absolutely still an active and ongoing event. All right, so this is some awesome efficiency capability here. Allow the system to do the work for you while you head off again to do the other things that you need to accomplish. If again, now we're talking about a compromised account, the situation is active, we can do something about that using automation. Okay, in our new case about a compromised account, the best scenario would be to lock out the account's ability to log in. As a security person, you probably know the way that I do, okay, that if you even for a second suspect that an account has been compromised, you're going to take away the ability for that account to connect to your network, right? Your job and your responsibility is to the entire environment, okay? One compromised account can lead very quickly to several compromised accounts and services, and then an entire environment, the entire environment is compromised, right? So you don't take chances as an analyst. Doesn't matter whose account it happens to be. You lock it out first, okay? All right, so there's a playbook on our GitHub repository that you can use straight after deployment to your environment that literally does one thing, right? It locks out user accounts that are associated with the Microsoft Sentinel entity list, okay? We also, to help evolve this a little bit, now have watch list capability built into Microsoft Sentinel. This method is integrated into Microsoft Sentinel. The data for each watch list is stored in the same data store as we're utilizing for analyzing for our security purposes with Microsoft Sentinel. So this allows us to quickly use the watch list data without working with external information. Gives us much better capability by allowing us to feed new watch list items directly from our investigations into these watch lists, right? Watch lists are an awesome function or capability. With the watch list feature, you can import and maintain your own lists within the console and easily use that data that is provided for your custom list, right? All right, there's a link there, aka.ms/aswatchlist, to read a little bit more about that. This feature is 100% delivered within Microsoft Sentinel. But there's also some other capability that you can add to Microsoft Sentinel to take advantage of this and automate some of it, right? So if you visit the playbooks folder in our Microsoft Sentinel GitHub repository today, there's a few playbooks available that will take this goodness, these evidence buckets that we have, these entities, and allow you to automatically update and add to those watch lists. So pretty cool. Okay, lastly, as part of our thorough investigation, let's close out this incident. All right, this individual has been identified as a person who has appropriate access and capability to access the Azure portal. All right, remember those user entity behavior analytics. They connected from a compliant device, used an IP address that was deemed acceptable, right? So we've added this individual to our trusted list. All right, we have one more thing to do to ensure that this person doesn't get caught up in this particular alert next time. But before we do that, let's just kind of close out this incident, right? And let's close it out appropriately. You have several options that you can use to detail why the incident is being closed. In our case, we're going to choose benign positive or suspicious but expected, all right? We still want to continue to be notified when Cloud Shell is run in this environment or when brute force attack or whatever the situation or incident happens to be. But in this instant, it was investigated and reported to be okay. All right. Lastly, let's close this out. Okay. So this is the last piece of this. So the last piece, right, of this is not necessarily something that will be done every single day, but it is something, okay, that needs to be considered for every single investigation. How can we make our tool, Microsoft Sentinel, work better and more intelligent in the future, particularly for this specific occurrence? We've added this individual to our trusted list in a watch list, but now we have to actually do something to that original analysis or that analytics rule, right? So that it's capable of logically separating trusted individuals from those who are still, we are still prohibiting in performing this action, okay? So let's take a look at this. So let's evolve the intelligence of our Security Operations Center, all right? Here's one way to do that that is actually part of this same workflow that we've been working on. So on the overview pane of each incident is a link that takes us directly to the analytics rule that generated the incident, okay? Click on that link, drop into the original analytics rule, and adjust it so that it works differently next time, All right, so that it includes some automation to help minimize our efforts next time and help shorten the time to triage investigation even further. So in our example here, we're adding information about our watch list that now includes this individual that we've investigated. All right, so next time this runs, it won't report on this specific person, but it will report on those who are still not trusted to test against the Azure portal. But there's some other things we can also do to build better intelligence. All right, we can identify any additional entities that we want to capture next time. We can include, for example, that compliant device that we found. Let's include that so that we have that in that incident next time, along with the other entities that we have. We can adjust how often that we're notified and how often that this analytics rule runs based on our environment. This may be more critical to us, right? So we can change and adjust how often that it runs. We can adjust how alerts are being grouped, and if the analytics rule should wait until we've had time to investigate, helping eliminate additional noise in the system for us, right? From an efficiency standpoint. We can remember, all right, how we responded utilizing some automation. Remember how we use those specific playbooks to add that investigative context for the IP address and the user account through Have I Been Pwned? Remember that? So we ran those manually. You saw me do that. Click, 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 right? That was awesome information. Why not next time those tidbits of information, why can't they just be supplied automatically for us? Here, we'll just literally add that automation here so that the next time this thing runs and it discovers this thing that we told it to go look for, it's going to supply that additional enrichment. We don't even have to worry about it. All right. All right. So that's a wrap. One thing I think important to highlight here is that we've talked through a very specific use case. Okay. Because Microsoft Sentinel allows you to connect data from anywhere, on-premises, Microsoft services, other clouds, AWS, GCP, your own use cases are literally up to you. You can effectively monitor and alert on any scenario based on any threat intel that you have. All right, I'm going to leave you with this. These are some additional daily must-dos that I feel are important for any security team or security operations team. Again, these are things that can be done in an efficient manner. There's some other discussions we can have around efficiency for these. Maybe we can do that at a later date, just so you understand it. But hopefully you get a better understanding of what it actually looks like here. All right. I want to leave you with some Microsoft Sentinel resources. There's that GitHub repo I kept talking about. There's our product blog, the docs for Microsoft Sentinel. We have a feedback and features link there where you can actually go request features and give feedback on existing features. Some other things, some ways to connect with me, a weekly newsletter for Microsoft Sentinel, some things if you're interested in Microsoft Sentinel and interested in learning more, getting more in-depth knowledge, absolutely reach out to me. But there are these resources that you can utilize and take advantage of as well. And with that, I want to thank everyone. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for your interest. I hope you don't ever hesitate to reach out to me, Twitter, LinkedIn, however is best for you to engage. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. We'll talk soon.